Hi there, my name is Paul and today I show you everything you need to know about blending modes in Photoshop. So let's get started. Blending modes are a very powerful tool. There are so many creative and practical uses of them that it's impossible to list them all. Not only you can make certain elements of a layer visible or invisible, but we can also decide how the layer above will affect the one below. To explain it a little better, when you're blending layers, you take pixels from one layer and mix it with pixels from another layer to create a new effect. I know, it might sound a little complicated. And what if I add to it that at the moment there are 27 blending modes available? Overwhelming? We can handle it. Just stay with me till the end of this episode. I decided to split this tutorial into two parts. In the part you are about to watch, I will tell you all the basic rules of working with blend modes and show you which ones you will use the most often in practice. If you want to learn more, in the description below this video, I will leave you a link to the extended version of the tutorial. Well, after this long introduction, let's finally jump into Photoshop. First, maybe I'll show you how to find the menu with blend modes. You can go to Layer Styles by clicking on this effects icon and select Blending Options. Another way is to double-click on the thumbnail of the layer next to its name. In the window that opens, we find the drop-down menu with the blend modes. However, the fastest way is to select the mode you need directly from the Layers panel. Right here. You are probably wondering how to remember all the options when there are so many of them. I have one very important advice for you. Don't do it. Just don't. Don't learn every single mode by heart. The hardest thing for you to do is to look through all the modes and see how they affect the layer. Now look again at the drop-down menu with the layers. As you can see, it is divided into 6 sections. Just try to remember that this division is not accidental. Remember only that. By reading the name of the first mode in each group, you will already have an outline of how it works. And so we call the first group Normal, the second group Darkening, the third group Brightening, the fourth is the Contrast group, the fifth we call it Inversion group, and final, let's name Content. The modes in group 2 are the exact opposite of the modes in group 3, and vice versa. In practice, in the vast majority of cases, you will use only the top few modes from each group. It will be the best if I show you how each group works with an example. Bear with me till the end of this tutorial for more practical examples and final tips. And by the way, if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. We have a sample photo open. Let's create a new layer over it with a simple black to white gradient. Click on the gradient tool, select black and white linear gradient, and fill the layer with it, drawing a straight line from left to right. To keep the line perfectly straight, hold down the Shift key. Expand the Blend Mode panel. As you can see at the start, the new layer is automatically set to Normal mode. The second is the Darkening group, which results in a darker blend. For example, let's choose the Multiply option. What happened? The areas of the layer that were white are completely invisible. The areas that were black are completely visible. Everything in between is evenly blended, with the rule that the darker pixel you blend, the darker pixel you get. Let's see an example of how this is used in everyday work with the program. Let's apply a photo of flying birds to the same background. As you can see, they are placed on a white background. Let's change the blend mode to one of the darkening group. In this case, Multiply. And voila! Only birds are left. The background is invisible. The third group is a brightening group. Look what it does. Let's go back to our gradient. I will change its mode, maybe to screen. As you can see, we got the effect exactly opposite of the previous one. The white is completely visible, and as the pixels get darker, they become more and more invisible. So, as a result, we get brighter image. This group is very useful, for example, when you want to place in your project an object with a black background which should be invisible. Let's put a campfire photo taken at night on our background. Now let's adjust the size and place it maybe here. Now change the mode to screen. Let's add a layer with levels to further darken the photo. And finally, use a mask to make the fire blend with the background. Now we can see just the fire without the black background. Super useful. The fourth is the contrast group. The modes here make dark pixels even darker and light pixels lighter. Let's go back to our gradient and let's change the mode to, let's say, overlay. Look what happened. In places where pixels of the gradient were darker than 50% gray, we ended up with darker pixels, and vice versa. Where the mixed layer pixels were lighter than 50% gray, the resulting pixels were brightened accordingly. In the spot where our gradient was exactly 50% gray, nothing has changed. As you probably noticed, we can say that in this case we increase contrast. This is what contrast boosting is all about, making the dark pixels darker and the light pixels lighter. Look how we can apply this to our photo. Add a new layer and fill half of it with black. To mark the center of the photo, click on the ruler on the left and drag a line. It should snap to the center of the photo when you get close to it. If you can't see the rulers, go to the View tab and just activate them here. Also make sure you have the Snap to Guidelines option checked. Now let's pick the rectangular selection tool. It's the second icon on the toolbar. And draw a selection. Click outside the layer and drag towards the center. The rectangle will automatically clip to the guideline. Fill the selection with black. I have the foreground color set to black, so use the Alt Backspace shortcut. On a Mac, it will be Option Delete. Deactivate the selection with the Ctrl Command D. And finally, change the mode to soft light. You can see the difference right away. The next group contains special modes used in specific situations. For example, in a difference mode, the program looks for, well, differences between two layers to create blend. If you overlay two identical images and change the mode to difference, you will get a black image, because the overlapping pixels are exactly the same. There are no differences between them. We can use this blending mode, for example, to accurately stack two identical images. A slight shift will be immediately visible as a white or colored pixels. The last group is called content, because it compares the components of a layer, such as color, saturation, and brightness. We use it to target only one of the components. So by selecting one of the modes, you can affect only one of the components. Quick example. Let's create a selection of a snake. Grab the Quick Selection tool and click on Select Subject. Refine the selection if needed. Now click on this icon and choose a solid color. For example, let's set it to red and click OK. Change the new layer mode to hue. And look, the snake has changed color while keeping all the details. We can now open the color swatch of the solid color layer and change the color of the snake to whichever color we want. Here, we are just changing the hue, not affecting the saturation. Another mode we can select is saturation. As you can guess, in this case, we can only change the saturation of the color, but we do not affect the hue. Next, we have the color option. In this mode, we can modify the hue and the saturation in the same time. And finally, the last mode is luminosity. Here the hue remains untouched, and of course the brightness and saturation change. Remember that if the effect you achieve with blending modes is too strong, you can always use the opacity slider and reduce the effect by lowering the visibility of a layer. And one last thing I'd like you to know. Blend modes are available not only for layers, although here we use them most often, exactly the same modes are available for the brush tool. Right here, depending on the brush color and background color you've chosen, you can get different effects by changing modes. You can find more about this in the tutorial dedicated to the brush tool. And so we almost reached the end. As you can see, blend modes are extremely helpful option. You don't have to be afraid of them. All you have to do is test them out. If you are not sure which blend modes you should use, sometimes it's best to just experiment. Take a look. Click once on the menu with modes, and then with the up and down arrows, you can jump between them and observe live results. Alternatively, you can select the blending layer box and choose the move tool, and now using key combination Shift+, Shift-, scroll through the modes. This way you can cycle through them and pick the right one. And that's it. I hope you find this guide helpful, and if so, I would be very happy if you click the thumbs up. I also encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I believe you will find a lot of useful information here. If you have any questions, feel free to visit the comments section. I say goodbye now. Until the next one. Take care.